In June of 2000, Blizzard established itself as the de facto daddy in the arena of the dungeon crawler hack and slasher when they released the much anticipated sequel to Diablo. Diablo 2 was and remains to this day one of just the absolute pinnacle examples of what a great, fun mob dungeon hack and slash loot grabber is supposed to be. But yeah, well before that, back in the mid-'80s, a little-known company called Tengen released a fun game of their own called Gauntlet. Gauntlet became much more widely known when in 1987 they released a console port for Nintendo, and many of us were introduced to the game that we now know and love, and the skeezy, sketchy elf that shoots the food when other people need them. Fast forward many years, and several different iterations of Gauntlet have been released. The train of thought just completely dissolved there. In any event, in 2014, Arrowhead Games, the same production house behind Magica, released yet another iteration of Gauntlet, simply titled Gauntlet, for the PlayStation 4. And it was widely heralded as a nearly perfect progression of the game, which made a lot of people really curious about why they made plans to release the 2015 Gauntlet Slayer Edition. Is it worth it? If you've already played the pudding out of the 2014 release, maybe a rental. If you haven't, you want to get this. Before we go too much further, we should probably establish what exactly the Slayer edition of Gauntlet is and what varies it from the version that was released in 2014. One of the biggest differences between the two games is the gameplay mechanics themselves and the way that relics are handled. In 2014's Gauntlet, you could use 2 different relics at a time, but in order to use each relic, you had to use one of your potions to activate that relic, and once you got your relics, that was it. You just had 2 of them. In the Slayer edition of the game, you can only have 1 relic at a time, but you trigger it based on cooldowns, which means you can use it a lot more per level. It makes it more of an active part of the dungeon crawl. And there are 10 different relics that everybody can choose from. Everybody has access to the same pool of relics, and each relic adds a different level of complexity and gameplay. Some of them are clearly more suited to one class versus another, but mixing and matching them can provide a different gameplay experience. And one of the other things that's cool about the relics in the Slayer edition is that they're upgradable. You don't just get a cool relic, you can spend your hard-earned gold and make that relic even better and even better. My personal weapon of choice for the elf are boots that make you move faster and fire faster. And you keep on upgrading those, and they make you move even faster and fire even faster, and slows enemies that get around you, and discreetly increase your height. I don't remember what the other stuff is. The other major difference between the two games is the loadout screen. Now, before you enter each area, you can give your character different equipment, different weapons. There is a new talisman system where you can give your player a keepsake, as it were, and different keepsakes give your character different powers as well. It's different than the Gauntlet shop that was in the 2014 version, and really the differences in gameplay are pretty significant. The Necromancer makes her appearance from the 2014 game as well, so definitely still some juice there as well for people that really enjoyed the Necro. Some substantial changes between the 2014 and 2015 games. Again, if you played the 2014 title and you've really sunk a lot of time and energy into it, maybe the 2015 game's not quite worth the expenditure to you. Watch some gameplay videos. Maybe grab a demo of it off of Steam if you can. Definitely made for a gamepad rather than a keyboard and mouse, I would say. But if you haven't, and you're a fan of the Gauntlet games, if you've played Dark Legacy, it's really a decent continuation of that gameplay. Very, very smooth, very fluid. A lot of people are griping a little bit about how the graphics, especially on the PlayStation 4, aren't up to snuff. And you know what? I just don't think I care about that. Everything is smooth, even when there's a lot of different critters on the screen. And there's a certain point at which adding additional fluff and graphics really kind of takes away from the performance of the game. Some games you want to be photorealistic, and some games you really want, more of a fantastic art style to go along with them. And this is just one of those games where a more fanciful art style really kind of helps keep the game kind of in check. It's not so busy visually that you can't keep track of what's going on. That having been said, if you don't destroy the monster generators in the rooms quickly enough, things will get out of hand super duper quickly. Storyline of the game is completely and totally throwaway. Morak is at it again and wants more fighters to wander their way through the Gauntlet and do a thing so that he can become more powerful. Again, a completely throwaway story. Definitely the same varied playstyles between the four characters that you're used to all the way back to the 1987 NES version of the game. Your warrior has a ton of hit points and is great in up close combat, and you've got your Valkyrie, who is less hit points but better defense, and it starts to get more and more ranged. And then you got your elf, who's pretty much all ranged combat but is squishy, and then you've got your wizard, who is extraordinarily squishy, but who basically is a direct lift out of Arrowhead's Magicka game. You can customize different types of spells in the Magicka game. You could push the buttons for a fire spell, and an ice spell, and you get some bizarre variant of a spell that you've never seen before. That's definitely the way that the wizard in Gauntlet has been put together. If you're not familiar with the Magicka magic system, the game doesn't do a really good job of explaining it to you, so it could be super duper confusing right out of the chute. Would definitely read up online a little bit, but by far it's painfully obvious that if you're good at playing the wizard, you're just a destructive tour de force. The wizard is so much more powerful than the other classes. It's just ridiculous. But 2 good shots to the chin and he's dead. Gameplay is pretty much exactly the way it is, the way it has been from a lot of the other games. It's top down, 4 people on a screen, up to 4 people. When the original version came out in 1985 for the arcade, it was 4-player, and then when it was ported over to the Nintendo Entertainment System in '87, you could only have 2-player. Obviously, the game was never optimized for the NES satellite. More's the pity. But then most of the versions of Gauntlet after that have been 4-player, and the game's just that much better for it. It really handles multiple people on the screen at once pretty stinking well. The game is dark, so especially if you're playing it in the daytime and you've got other light in the room, you may want to turn the brightness up. Some of the stuff in the game's kind of hard to see, but definitely a great deal of fun. And the announcer, the narrator, if you will, of the game is positively hilarious. There's unique things that the characters will say, that the narrator will say. And yes, you are lambasted if you are the elf and you shoot the food. It's a great deal of fun. Single player, the campaign, they estimate that it'll take you around 8 hours, but you're going to want to grind some levels to make some gold to get upgrades. But obviously multiplayer is where the game is at, and it's just ridiculous amounts of fun. There's a new setting in the 2015 Slayer edition called Endless Mode, which is exactly what it sounds like. You just play and the game keeps on ramping the difficulty up further and further, and it gets pretty ridiculous pretty quickly, but it's very, very frantic and very, very fun, and I can see that it'll just be a massive time waster for me and my wife and whoever happens to come over and want to play for the foreseeable future. So definitely for $20, it's a well polished, well produced game, and it's a return to form for Gauntlet, which is never ever a bad thing. So don't shoot the food.